Hi, Debbie. I thought I was alone.
Sorry, I shut my mic off. All right, who's on here with me? I don't recognize the voice. Lisa, is that you?
Yeah, yeah, that's
All right.
me.
Okay. Hey, I
So
was just
where's
thinking of,
everybody else?
I don't know. I'm just wondering if I got the wrong number.
Well,
Um,
I tried it twice off the email, and you're the
well,
first
maybe
one
you know
that's
what?
come.
You know what? It's 2 minutes to 12. They might just be slow in getting started.
Yeah.
I know that happens. But in the
Mhm.
meantime, I was thinking, I wanted to tell you, I'm going to be driving to the meeting, so, sorry, you're gonna hear my garage door in the background. Um, I, I think that that's a great idea, adding the Boys and Girls Club to the recognition for our Students Above Self program. I think that's really good. It's a different, a different, target
Uh-huh.
group, but I think it may be a group that doesn't get picked up. These may be kids that aren't going to get picked up, aren't going to
Mhm.
compete with um the people that we're recognizing. So that's good. Everybody wins. So yeah,
Everybody seems to be on board, so that really
yeah,
makes me happy.
yeah. And I don't do you know, like, how did they approach you, or did you go to them?
No, Doug is the one who said, I think this is a good idea. And I said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I agree because we can acknowledge them in June
Yeah.
because we're still in it. And
Yep.
it'd be a new market essentially.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that it's a great idea. I said, but you're going to have to go to the board
Yeah.
and see if they'll, increase the funding. And so they did. They were all excited. And so now somebody's going to get me the information. So this coming year, we'll get one from them. And apparently they already have some kind of a program
Now.
where
Um,
they acknowledge their student, the
yeah.
and so that it should be relatively simple for them and to add us. So I think it's going to be really good.
All right. Well, yeah, I do too. I just think it's great. And I don't anticipate any pushback from the bookstore. They're very supportive of whatever we're doing with kids. So that's not going to be a problem, I don't think. And certainly I think it's a good one to add. So
Mhm.
has anybody objected at this point in time? I can't
No,
imagine. Good.
no.
Well, that's good.
Um, my people that, I sent the email to, everybody's responded positively, or they haven't responded yet, but I know that they will support it. And
Yeah.
so we're just going
Good.
from there. I'm
Good.
excited we're going to have it.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. I think that's very good. Oh,
Yeah.
I hear now. I hear our group is joining us.
Do we see them? I don't see them.
Okay. Well, I'm not looking. I'm just listening. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, I see Greg came on. I see Jim Lucier came on, you and me, and that's it.
huh. Okay. Greg and Jim Lucier.
Uh-huh.
Jim Lucier, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
This is Debbie Amin. It's good to hear your voice, sir.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah. I just drove back from Bend yesterday.
Oh, you did?
I did. I had kids visiting from Michigan. My son lives in Bend. And
Wow.
Tuesday I was floating on the river with all of my grandkids and my
That's a good
kids.
thing because it was really hot.
It was really hot. And when it gets hot in Bend, it is really hot.
Yeah. Well, we're going through that again today, so come on
Yeah,
back.
Yeah, I think I'll have a little bit to share down here too.
Good.
Lisa and I were just trying to figure out why nobody else is on the line. So,
There they are. They're coming.
oh,
They're
okay,
coming.
okay, perfect. Sometimes it takes us a while to get started.
There we are.
All right, I'm gonna go to mute now.
Me too.
Giants play. It's one thing that the Washington Redskins play. Yeah. I can have it. It wouldn't work especially this late in the game, right? I could say, we have a power plant, boys, but we can't get it to work.
Welcome, Valley View Winery. Please stand and pass out as the lead us in the pledge and the four-way test. The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the things we say and do the four-way test. Is it secure? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. Inspiration, Doreen.
Where is everybody today? This is really a small group today. So for those of you who don't know, you're gonna know, today in 1955, Disneyland opened in Anaheim, California. So with that in mind, I have a quote from Walt Disney. All of our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. When you believe in a thing, believe in it all the way, simplicity and unquestionable. And isn't that what Rotary is all about?
Actually, the 25 of us here, that's about average for me. It's just that they all wanted to sit with Luke's back there. What's going on? Come on.
Is Luke's providing the beer to that table?
Yeah. They'll all move forward when we have a new sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any visiting Rotarians today? Someone on Zoom?
We have Jim Lucier, past district governor Jim Lucier. Say that again, past district governor Jim Lucier. In the corner.
I can. You're gonna do, thank you.
I'll introduce him. Past District Governor Jim Lucier is on Zoom. Hi, Jim.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
Okay, and any guests today? Okay, so do we have some announcements? You want to line up over here or come on up and Steve Rowe, you make an announcement for us. And I just, while you're coming up, I want to say how much fun we all had last week at the comedy hour here. And we were honoring Jenny. Where are you, Jenny? It was really, really hot. It was hysterically fun. So thank you for whoever organized us getting it. It was really great. Okay, Steve, you're up.
Okay. Well, tonight is the park in Grants Pass, it's a quarterly event, it's fun in your life. Kind of applicable for my business anyway. The proceeds, the $5 suggested contribution to the door benefits 3D industry, which I did a deep preview story on them about a month or two ago. They really do some amazing things to help the development table resident community. But we have 3 storytellers, but I have another one today, so I think we have 4 storytellers. It's been a rough one because we've had some illnesses that caused last minute cancellations for us. So that is but anyways, like 7 o'clock, Bethany Presbyterian Church, and we've got two musicians at the same time. The other thing too is it's not how visible this thing is. This is the latest coloring book page for Hope. And it's a picture where they're all of us chase tennis balls and also popcorn, which is a favorite treat, the You Matter card. And person did this from Indiana for me. And these are for meeting with students, but I also brought some of these on favorite coloring pages.
Thank you, Steve. I love to color, so I would like one of those. And my first car was a 1/5 membership in the 1969 VW Club that 5 of us shared. And so, of course, my 2 brothers had it all the time. And anyway, we have some great stories around that. So I know it's going to be a good evening at the hearth. I have another sad announcement, and sorry, there's some cards going around, but our dear Patty Henson lost one of her daughters, and she passed away earlier in the week, and we have cards for her, and we send our thoughts and prayers to her, and also that's Alice's aunt, so Allison, we're sorry for your loss as well. Okay, so I think we're gonna move over to Dawn. Dawn's just gonna introduce our speaker today.
Maybe I should make this long because we're going to be pretty brief today. It's my pleasure to introduce Mark Wisnovsky, and I'll give you a little bit of his background as well as his accomplishments. He was actually born in New Jersey, and then when he was about 7 or 8 years old, his parents moved, of all places, to the Applegate Valley in Southern Oregon. And in 1972, they planted 13 acres of wine grapes. And by 1976, they started their winery, Valley View. And what is really interesting, I thought, wow, that's kind of amazing. It was the first winery to come into existence in Jackson County since Prohibition. And we really didn't like Prohibition. Mark is a graduate of St. Mary's School and then went on to Oregon State University, where he got a degree in business finance and philosophy, which I find really interesting because I think when you drink wine, you become very philosophical. So anyway, at this point, he became president of Valley View in 1990, and now he owns and operates Valley View with his brother Michael. I tried to meet Mark earlier with Judy, but he stood us up when he went to the But I think Mark really exhibits what Rotary is all about because he's a leader and he's in the service. And I want to give you an idea of what I mean by that. He's the co-founder of Hearts and Vines Wine Auction, which in 20+ years has raised over $4 million for local nonprofits. He's a past or present board member of ArtBeat, Arts and Vines, Metro Jackson County Chamber of Commerce, Oregon Wine Board, Southern Oregon Winery Association, Oregon Wine and Farm Tour. I'm getting quiet. The American Vintners Association, Children's Advocacy Center, Road Community Foundation, and the Medford Road Rotary Directors, he was the one who helped direct the Medford School District, which passed a $189 million state facilities levy in 2006. So he and his brother, Michael, as I said, also operate third generation farms, which is dedicated to growing industrial hemp for the production of CBD. And he lives in Jacksonville. I like it with his two sons, Clinton and Colin, and 150-pound mastiff named Rock, who probably weighs more than his sons. All right, with that, Mark, welcome.
Thank you. I still have time, right? Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for Judy for inviting me. It's been, as I was driving over here, I thought of all the times when I first gave my first Rotary speech in 1992 when I was inducted into the Medford Road Club, or what we used to, what do we call those? Not those occupational talks, but vocational talks, yeah. And at that time, I said something like, boy, the wine industry's come a long way in the 20 years since my parents started planting first grapes. And then since then it became, boy, the wine industry's come a long way in the 30 years. And then the 40 years. And this is, I think, the second time that I've said 50 years, which is pretty unbelievable. I kind of catch myself and do some math again. But it's been 52 years, and we've had obviously incredible growth from when you could imagine people used to drive down our driveway when parents first started planting grapes and say, "What are you doing? You're crazy. Grapes will never grow in Southern America." And in just 50 years, you have what no one questions anymore. You see a new vineyard, your winery starts, and we all knew, or at least my parents had a pretty good idea, since grapes were grown here all the way back, which is the first area, in fact, where grapes were grown in the Pacific Northwest in the 1850s with Peter Britt. I don't know if people knew that, but Peter Britt had the very first vineyard winery in the Pacific Northwest, called it Valley View. And when Prohibition killed the industry, my parents came back in '72, and we renewed the history, and we decided to renew honor Peter Britt by calling our winery Valley View as well. And in fact, we renewed the label too, with some help from the Historical Society. So obviously there's been a huge amount of changes. We see new vineyards and wineries seemingly every day. And there's also been, a fair amount of challenges. I wanted to sort of go through some of the changes and challenges that we're experiencing now, and some of the pretty traumatic changes at Valley View in the last couple of years. At some point, first to some point, we'll be bringing around some wine, so I'll be talking about that as well. But we've gone from, we were the 12th winery in 1976. We were first winery south of Roseburg. It was, we were joined about a couple years later by Wisnovsky Winery, which is, I'm not totally sure if they're still in business. They were purchased by Bridgeview over in Cape Junction, and then about 86 or 87 by Weisinger, which became the second winery in Jackson County. There are now 1,150 wineries. 1,150 wineries. Okay, that's 100 times more than what we started. There are 125 wineries in Southern, which is probably 100 more than most people know of. There's a ton of custom crush. The vineyards, especially between here and the Applegates, it used to be a 50-acre vineyard, was well known. Now there's 100, 200-acre vineyards that have been planted and are producing. So it's no longer, I guess you'd say, a novelty. It's no longer a hobby. It's no longer a small part of Southern Oregon. It's now an industry. The interesting thing about the Southern Oregon wine industry is that it's not really an industry. It's the oddest thing. I mean, I like, you know, what's that? I have a finance degree, I have a philosophy degree, and boy, I use them both every single day. Trying to rectify the fact that people will start a business without doing a single shred of research and spend millions of dollars doing it. And I don't know of another industry, and I really thought about where this happens. If somebody wanted to start a car repair place or a coffee place in Grants Pass, maybe they would research other car repair places. Maybe they would research Dutch Bros and Starbucks, a human being, find out where they are, find out if there's a niche there, find out if there's a location. Probably tough with Dutch Bros, that there's actually could be a single location in Grants Pass or anywhere in Oregon that's not being served within 1 mile of a drive-through coffee place. But no, not in the wine industry. They will put one in a block away from every existing coffee place. And they will do it saying, well, we're gonna serve our coffee in blue cups. And think that that's some type of competitive advantage. And in most cases, they'll put this in, they'll go through the permit process, they'll build a new drive-in coffee place, and they will have never even heard of Dutch Bros. That's how interesting this so-called industry is. People coming in, paying millions of dollars to buy a vineyard or put a winery in, who have done zero research. And had they done research, they would realize that we are producing 300 to 500% as much wine as we are consuming. And most of them have no plans of ever selling outside of the valley, let alone outside the state or outside the country. We're one of the very few wineries that exports, that sell that state. Very, very few in Southern. Most have no intention of doing so, in which case what that means is we're just boom, 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 boom. Because the people that are doing it have made a lot of money doing something else. And when you make a lot of money doing something else and then move into another industry, you tend to have a little bit of, and that ego, and combined with the fact that your dream while you were at some arborist job was to one day live your one to make your own wine. The research doesn't always come into play when the research says, yeah, that makes financially impact. So we are at a time right now that we are awash in Oregon wine and awash in Southern Oregon wine. And we're going to see some unfortunate changes. And unfortunately, those who have the deepest pockets, which are often ones who created the problem, are going to be the ones that will suffer the least because they can weather it to a certain extent. Now, in normal times, you know, with the growth of the population, with the growth of wine drinkers, you know, we probably could have weathered out a little bit better. But after COVID, as probably everybody who runs any kind of industry or does anything with the public, whether historically we will find that COVID was the reason or some inflection points or however we all look back on this 10, 20 years from now. There's no doubt that it had a major impact on virtually every industry that we exhibit. From restaurants having difficulty finding wait staff, having to pay wait staff so much more than we previously paid, and closing them. From the tariffs that were implemented, we still have a 25% tariff on wine bottles coming from China, and I will tell you, we used to pay about $12,000 to $15,000 to bring in a truckload of glass. We now pay $20,000 to $27,000 for that exact same truckload of glass. So it did actually almost triple during the whole container problem about a year or two ago when everybody couldn't buy car parts, you couldn't buy anything. Now it's dropped down a little bit, but that 25% tariff is still there. And if China's paying it, what I would love to know who to send the bills to, because we're paying. I'm paying every single bill I get from our glass company. I write a $2,000 to $4,000 supplement for the tariff, which goes, of course, to the U.S. government. So That's why the previous, the current administration said, yeah, I don't like that money, so they never got rid of it. And it certainly looks like it's going to continue. So there was a time there, a couple years after COVID, when our number one cost of putting out a bottle of wine was the actual bottle. Not anything that had to go into the bottle. That's something that is wrong for one. What you should be paying for is what's inside that bottle, what's containing that fluid. So things have been a little upside down. It was certainly done, of course, to help the domestic glass producers, of which there's two. One of which shut down when their glass plant sprung a leak and spread liquid glass over the entire plant. It took 5 years to fix. And the other one is Gallup, who has their own, of course, use for their bottles. So, and of course, all the domestic glass companies, the Mexican glass companies probably raised their price 25%, which is what businesses tend to do. So it did not actually affect anybody other than the government. Money. We all pay a little bit more money for that bottle of wine, that bottle of beer, so bottle of anything, as well as all the other tariffs. But that's just one idea of the challenges that we're all facing. Labor costs, of course, like everyone, just essentially hasn't done it. I don't particularly mind too much because the fact is we're a pretty expensive place to live here and labor costs were relatively low. So having those at that level, make a little bit more money, be able to afford a place and be able to, raise a family better, is a good thing. So our costs were just came a little bit closer to what Californians have been paying for years. So that's not an awful thing to experience. What has really hit the industry, and again, something that I have a hard time sort of complaining about, is that there was a reassessment to a certain extent by COVID. Everybody seemed to reassess where they were. It was a time that we stayed home. We had health issues. We didn't know what was going on. We reflected on what was important in life, and our own bodies, and things like that. We stockpiled too much toilet paper. Fortunately, we stockpiled a lot of wine. So we had the greatest 3 months in the history of the winery. Was that people realized, okay, now I have a whole bunch of wine, I better consume it. But what often came out of COVID, whether it was because of that or the reflection or changes in people's lifestyles, was a reassessment of how much alcohol I was going to drink. And almost across the board, I mean, I could raise your hand if in the last 5 years you were generally drinking less alcohol. Okay. Okay, so you guys can all leave because I want to talk to you. I want to talk to the people that are drinking the same. So I thought about asking about more, but that's a little bit invasive. Okay. So in general, people are drinking less, and we're also seeing a shift. Maybe not as much with this population. I won't ask you to raise your hands, but there has been a huge impact in alternatives to alcohol. And what is the number one alternative to alcohol? Anyone? Okay.
Cannabis.
Cannabis. I should have said, what is the number one mind-altering alternative or intoxicating? Is cannabis. So you have this entire group of people, and believe me, it is every age group, which are, how do I put it, modifying their relaxation with a combination of alcohol and cannabis, gummies, tinctures, whatever it is, because they're finding at certain parts of their life that consuming a fair amount of alcohol does different things to your body at different ages, and they're not as thrilled about the next day. So those little changes in the population have huge impacts in industries. People having a mixed drink at a restaurant and nursing it and not having a glass of wine with a sharing a bottle of wine. Unbelievable impact. Having less restaurants. Having a restaurant choose a wine from Australia instead of Southern Oregon. Having people visiting less wineries or visiting as entertainment has a big impact. So all these things that are sort of everyday choices have major impacts. And we all, in a sense, collectively, determine what industries are gonna stay, and you know what I'm saying, just by a tiny little decision that we all make every single day. The other major challenge that has affected Southern Oregon is, anyone? Smoke. One of those things that you don't tend to pay attention to when the days are like this, but knock on wood, and we're probably gonna be reminded soon. It is the single greatest thing that affects vineyards and wineries, from smoke taints in our vineyards and ruining fruit or damaging the quality of the wine, to visitations that essentially shuts down tasting rooms, to restaurant sales and grocery sales where people who have choices about where to visit, and obviously this is a major tourist industry and we rely heavily on tourists, decide, well, I'm not there, and you can't really blame too many people, especially when we're all posting how awful the smoke is. And people see it even when it's not awful. I mean, I cringe every time I see somebody post a picture of a fire that's blowing toward, towards Niagara Falls, like, oh my God, here it is starting again, not realize the impact from somebody that it's actually beautiful skies here. But it's something that the entire West Coast is becoming used to, unfortunately. And as we all know, when that happens, no matter where we are or what industry we're in, it has this depressing effect on people. You don't want to go. You want to hunker down, put new filters in your house. Maybe you want to have a glass of wine to get out of that. That could be an option, but that's. No. Is there anything to do to mitigate the smoke? No.
You have to throw away those. Right.
So, the good thing is, there's always a silver lining, right? The good thing is that we've had smoke issues here for quite a long time. The other region that has is Australia. The bad news is that as long as it doesn't affect Napa or the Willamette Valley, then nobody researches it, okay? Now that it now affects Sonoma, Napa, and the Willamette Valley, oh my goodness, there's now research money going into it, and they're finding all kinds of things. They're being able to identify the grapes for testing. They're doing certain things that we were doing, like, does it help to water for irrigation, which we do? Can we water the grapes to maybe get the ash off the grapes? I mean, look, they're trying everything. That, by the way, is what time of the grapes, the hard berries, which we are now, are not permeable by smoke. So they would not be affected. There's a time that the grapes become softer, that they do become permeable. The main problem, or the main thing we've learned, and it's something that we all sort of apparently know, when you go out and smell smoke, you can kind of identify, what it is, a campfire, the sort of a fire. And you can also somewhat identify by the smell how fresh it is. Imagine standing in front of a campfire, you get a certain sense. And that's actually chemically known. There are certain components that are within a certain area of a forest fire. And those components are the worst. And as it's further and further away, they fall out, and the damage isn't as bad. So if that's any kind of answer, where we are in the Applegate, because the valley turns a little bit, and most of the fires, they do, seeds like Reddit or Roseburg, and right through Grants Pass, and then right up the Applegate, that's a problem. When it's over by the Kalmiopsis and the Silver Fire, and in 10 years, whatever the new 500,000 acre fire that will burn in the same place will be called, it goes over the top of us. And it does limit some of the sun, which is okay because we don't get a ton of sun, and we don't get any problems. So our fires tend to come up from California directly from Siskiyou if they have to be in the wrong place, and then come down from Roseburg. And that's the same with you guys. I think, you guys, with the Kalmiopsis, I'm not really sure how bad it gets in Grants Pass itself. But I know those fires that always stick between here and Canyonville, that whole area, come straight down and just sits. And that's where it causes problems. But, no, I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, we are getting warmer, and I'm not gonna talk about how or why or what's causing it, but everybody in the wine industry for the last 20 years have acknowledged that and has made dramatic changes and investments to grow different grapes in different areas. Champagne region in France is almost given up because they're saying in 20 years there may not be any more Champagne region. It's just too warm. So the hottest vineyard land in the world right now is in England, and moving into Belgium, moving into Scandinavia, and moving into northern Germany, because much of where grapes are grown right now, Napa being a classic example, are pushing the upper limits of heat units. It's not just the days that everyone looks at, it's the nights. And just as everyone experienced in the last 2 weeks, when we all used to open the windows at 9 o'clock at night. I don't think I have worked for almost 2 weeks. I'm not gonna get up at 2 in the morning and do that. It's the nights. So at some point, we start to say, this is, instead of this is an early year, this is an early year, this is unusually hot, what becomes normal? In the Applegate, especially where we are, climate change and the gradual warming has been great. We were on the edge, because if you're familiar with where our winery is, we have a big mountain to the east of us, we have a big mountain to the west of us, we get about 25 minutes less sun during the growing season than vineyards say down in Truman's, which is just 10 to 15 minutes away. Over the course of the season, that makes a big difference. So we can ripen varieties a little slower, not have the intense heat, and we get a nice breeze that comes right up the valley, and that really tends to moderate this. Plus, we have over sprinklers, which has become more and more rare, because water, of course, is not becoming more and more it's the other way, and we will turn the sprinklers on. We have been gradually rotating sprinklers anytime it gets well above 100 to cool the grapes down. That's been a big advantage. So move on to the bad news. Talk about the good news. 3 years ago, partially because of COVID, like everything else, our 36-year winemaker, been with us for obviously for a very long time, decides to go on to other ventures, semi-retire, had some health issues. And for the first time, the only thing I've ever done in my almost 40 years of winery that I've never done was hire him. So we had an opportunity. We reached out and did a lot of research. And I would tell you, up to that point, this is where the business part moves towards the philosophy part. I would have told you everything about how our site is different, how the soils work, how the air works, how the difference between day and night temperatures allows these grapes to ripen, which allows us to make this particular style of wine. Now I realize that that's all important. Obviously, you need all those things in order to make good wine. What I would not have told you was the incredibly important part a winemaker plays in making wine. And now I will tell you that it is by far the greatest part of that puzzle. The wine that we poured around here was one of his first vintages. His name's Mike Preston. He had spent his entire 30-year career making wine in Sonoma for some of the best wineries in Sonoma. He, like many people, decided a life change after COVID. His mom lived in Jacksonville. He's always loved the area. She had a health concern. He was like, I love Sonoma, but I'm tired of driving half an hour to go 6 months. I'm tired of $5 million houses. I'm tired of this stuff. Oregon looks like a really cool place. And he took a chance. We took a giant chance. Paying Sonoma Napa winemaker prices is not something that many winemakers in Oregon do. And if we had not made our venture into hemp, which at that time it was just that little 4-year window when everyone was starting back then, we did okay. We probably would not have been able to afford it either. But I'm so fortunate that we took that chance, because what I realized that not all winemakers are the same, just like not all chefs are the same. And what one chef can do with the same food can be really mind blowing. And what we found with the very first ones, which this is the Tempranillo, that's all estate grown. This is our main variety that we grow. 21 vintage was its first vintage. We now have released all the 21 vintage wines. There's 11 different wines that we made. We just received 10 90-point scores from one publication called Beverage Experts. The lowest of the wines we sent got a 92. The 3 highest got 95s, which is the highest score we've ever gotten. One of which is this Tempranillo. It raised our cumulative 90-point scores for the 21 vintage alone to 32, which is more than the cumulative 90-point scores in our previous 40 vintages. So I'm humbled because apparently I didn't know anything. In the 30+ years that I did this, I would have said sure winemakers important. But I am shocked more than anybody because I do the vineyard and the same grapes that I grew. And he's a big vineyard guy too, so we do it together. And we made changes in the vineyard, but I will tell you, the changes we made in the vineyard do not equal the quality of the wines that we produce. He is there every single day, and I've never have met somebody who's more meticulous, who's hands-on every single barrel. And we now can say across the board, from Pinot Noir and Chardonnay to Tempranillo, Syrah, we are making not just some of the best wines in Southern Oregon, but some of the best ones in Oregon. There's no winery in Oregon that's received the scores that we've gotten in the last year. We changed the labels up. This Tempranillo, you can do one of two things. You go to winery, it's $24 a bottle. You can say, Mark said that I can have the Costco price, which is $14.90. Or you can just go to Costco. Either way, depending what part of the valley, 238 versus 5. Costco had picked up the previous Tempranillo. We had to decide, this is obviously a whole different level, but Costco is not the easiest to change things, so we had to keep it at that price. So for a while, people will be getting incredible money for just $15. And then of course the road red that Judy mentioned that she loves, which is still 7 something, which is gonna be difficult to keep producing based on the glass prices and bottle prices. But because we go to Costco direct, we can make a little more and make it more. So it's all worked out. How long?
4 minutes.
4 more minutes. Is that
And
okay
then
for
5
folks?
minutes for questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, dang, did I not talk fast enough? I try to deal with the New Jersey thing, because I was always told that I talked a little too fast, so I tried to moderate the journalist's life. But we can either open it up for more questions, and then as we talk, because I tend to answer the questions pretty broadly.
How many employees do you have? Oh, in the market.
Okay.
Repeat, how many employees? do you
How
have?
many employees do we have? It varies, of course, seasonally, but generally 12 to 15 employees. We are still one of the only wineries, since when we started, we had to do everything because there were just so few companies that did alternative services like filtration, like bottling. So we're still one of the only wineries that does everything in-house, from 70 acres of vineyard, almost everything's estate grown, to bottling all of ourselves, labeling it all ourselves, and selling it all ourselves. So we have an entire distribution company as well. So they're really, off the top of my head, I don't think there's any winery that does that. Almost all the wineries rely on these mobile bottling units. And it just happens to be that that's just the way we like it. It's all under our control. And we could bottle for a third what a mobile line costs, and all that, this has never been a trust fund. It's never been, other than my ego, which I try to moderate, it's always been a business, and it's always been trying to put out the very highest quality for a price that people somewhere can afford. As we all know, we choose to live here, and it's not because we make a hell of a lot of money. So we tend to live here because we love the area. We've I know, we're aware, I like to sell wine to my neighbors. And I go around the world selling, and I'm most excited when we sell it here, because this is where I like to do it. Yes, ma'am.
As far as bottles go, there's no way to recycle the bottles again, or?
That's a really good question, because there is a new company called, about recycling with how expensive they are. There's a new company called Revival, I think it's called. They had the most success in Southern Oregon. And they come out with their own bottle, and then they're gonna have collection sites and reuse the bottles. So historically, because of the rules of the FDA, we cannot do it. We cannot sterilize it to the extent that the government says is sufficient. Plus labels, it used to be, the blues used to be water soluble, but you put an ice or anything that comes off. So the quality of adhesives is much better now, but much worse for the site. So, I certainly hope that this new company, it just so happens that we're examining it as well to see how it all works, because at this point, they only have screw tops, and we don't have a screw top system. So they're hoping that they can move into pour finish bottles, and we're hoping to have enough recycled places, where we can reuse the bottles. Just, if nothing else, even if it's the same cost, it's still a good thing. It kills me when I know how much these things cost to have to dump all these bottles, because we know it doesn't get recycled. But you guys know that it doesn't get recycled. It usually gets done. Yes.
Mark, could you, as we taste this chemical
Yes.
deal, you want to tell us a little bit about what we might expect?
Really don't like doing that, because
Good question.
and as she tastes it, which I'm sure, I think you're the only, I see everyone else has done, so I think you're the only one that's really has moderated herself. But, so, God, I think that this is, I like to tell the winemaker certain things, because I know that winemakers absolutely hate to hear it. So when I tasted this wine for the first time, I said, okay, Mike, this is it. Make the Jeopardy every year just like this. Sort of like, raise every kid the exact same way, in hopes that they turn out to be whoever they turn out. It's almost like that. So this Tempranillo to me is exactly, he made this wine every single year. It's got the right combination of good ripe fruit. There's not a lot of oak. It was a 2-year-old oak. That's one of the big things that he did was I knew, of course, about oak. I knew, of course, about barrels. I never knew that there was so much difference. And he goes down every year and he smells every single barrel. First of all, when he went into our warehouse when we first started, we had 175 barrels. And he said, I'm gonna take everything down, analyze everything, and I'll let you know how many we can keep and how many we can buy. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, he came up and he said, yeah, none of these are gonna work. And that was my first sort of slap in the face. Okay, so what's that mean? He goes, well, none of these are gonna work. And I said, I actually walked down to the warehouse and I said, so none of these, none of these here, not even that. I paid $800 for that. He goes, none of these are gonna work. He goes, you told me you wanted me to make the very best ones. None of these will work. That was a wake up. But we were, it's like hiring a chef saying, I'm not gonna get my vegetables from Cisco. I'm just not. I'm not gonna buy orange tomatoes that are not orange by genetics, but orange because they're just not right. I'm not gonna use tomatoes in anything. I'm not gonna make a caprese salad in January. I'm gonna make it in July, August, and maybe September when tomatoes taste like tomatoes. And everyone will notice the difference. Trust me on this. But we've always had it on the menu. We've always had a bruschetta in February. Yeah. And what does it taste like? It's those types of things that you just have to understand. And we all know what a real tomato tastes like. We all know what real produce tastes like that's grown locally and grown properly. And we pretty much now know, at least I know, what the best oak tastes like. And the good news was, he said, I don't want any New York, that lowered me at least 20 points of blood pressure. Because the New York is about $1,400 a barrel, times those 175 barrels, that's beyond us. He said, I'm gonna buy the very best ones before I shoot. So he calls all of his friends and we start weighing it up. And sure enough, took me a while to trust him. I know trust him. And this was twice used oak. There's probably no wine that has gotten a 95 points that has been aged in twice used oak. It's primarily used in New York. And because of that, you get this with new oak, you get this incredible chocolate, and you get used to it, but it's also very expensive, and it also gets in the way of the fruit. So the Tempranillo tends to taste like Merlot, it tends to taste like that, it tastes like Syrah, because the oak is a huge part. It's almost like, it's like a restaurant, to use the same analogy, just using a ton of butter and salt, which is what too many restaurants do. Butter and salt. And you end up not feeling as good at the end of the meal and stuff like that, because in essence, it's a little bit like cheating. You put a whole bunch of butter and salt on things, a whole bunch of fat, you can get away with a lot. If you cook without butter and salt, it's more difficult to make really good food. It takes more work, it takes more experience, but it's appreciated. People represent, people understand, represent. So Tempranillo is obviously the #1 variety in Spain. It doesn't have as much, I get in trouble with some people in Spain, of course, as much varietal characteristics as some other varieties. It tends to, as it ages, have more characteristics of like roasted meats and some leathery characteristics. But it's just an incredible medium body, great fruit, great kind of an earthy, almost inhabitable forest floor mushroomy character, especially again as it starts to develop a little bit of age. But what I love about this wine is it's almost as sort of a perfect wine in a sense. It's medium body, but it's got just enough structure to have a piece of meat. It's got a good long finish. It's not super tannic, but you can stick it away for a few years. You don't have to worry about the wine falling apart. Nice, long, soft finish. So I don't know if that was.
One more question.
Well, you should. If you're ready, have those two.
Just yes or no question. Yes or no.
Yeah, I know.
Did you sell barrels?
Yeah, it sold those planters.
Okay. Number two, I didn't mention any whites.
Any whites? Yes. Chardonnay, which is becoming more and more difficult because our main Chardonnay vineyard is losing its water source. So we're going to be struggling with Chardonnay. Viognier, which has always been a major variety of ours, but it's difficult to sell. So as we move on to more saleable varieties like Syrah and Pinot Noir, Viognier is being replanted. So we are moving, I guess, more towards a higher percentage of red, which is really where the market is. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Do you remember your question?
Well, I was just I don't know very much about wine, like, let's say nothing.
Yeah.
You're running 18 acres, correct?
70.
17 acres.
70.
70 acres, 70. Okay, so out of 70 acres, what volume of wine do you produce total?
So that would have given us about 3 tons an acre, 200 tons at about 60 cases a time, so that's about 12,000 cases. In reality, especially with some of the new things we're doing, we're going for less crop, for higher quality. So it gives us about 10,000 cases, which is about $120,000. Way more than the rest of it, which is why we sell on the state and sell to select international markets as well. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was really interesting. And I just want to put a personal plug in. I don't remember when I met Mark, but I came back to this area in 2014. So it's been at least 10 years. And we were in the same Rotary Club in Medford. And, it was at the RCC Foundation and there was never any money. You know how that is. And Mark was just always so generous when we were looking for prizes to give away to faculty and so forth. And I think in the end, Because I think rogue red is just delicious, and if you'll recall, we had that the other night at our party, Jim Hoover, and that's where we created the Doug Walker, which is red wine on ice. And Greg in fact came up and said, I'll have a Doug Walker. But the last time before I retired, I remember Marcus donating wine again, and it was sort of COVID. And when I went to his shop, I just insisted upon at least paying half price. This is a guy who donates all the time, you know, and he's, you know, it's a family business. And so I just want to thank you for all your public service and for hanging in there and for coming over and visiting with us. I hope everybody will go buy at least a bottle, if not a case, of this new Tempranillo. Tempranillo? There we go. So, okay. Thank you again. And let's see, I think Valerie, you're going to do sergeants and then happy bucks.
No, thank you. That was wonderful. Tiffany was my very favorite. So I was just like, wow, what a special treat to come today to get that. But no, it's wonderful to get the history of it. I have 100 more questions, but I could have kept going out of time. I wanted to see. Just July 18th, you know, my chance to sit down and instead of thinking about politics and all the craziness going on in the community, I can delve into history, and that is something I enjoy doing. So, July 18th, first of all, the number 18, this is kind of an interesting thing from that the 18th president was Ulysses S. Grant. I thought that was kind of apropos for our community. Going back in history, July 18th, 64 AD was the Great Fire of Rome, when half of Rome burned down, 6 days of fire and half of the city burned. In 1610, Michelangelo passed away. In 1817, Jane Austen passed away. Pride and Prejudice. In 1853, the first train arrived in San Francisco, and you know how that changed our country. In 1914, the Army began creating flying machines for the military, and that was the beginning of what is now our Air Force. I was looking, I could have sworn there was something in July 18th about Amelia Earhart, so that I could honor Jenny, because I just love the fact that she is so into flying. That's just awesome. But I couldn't find anything. You know how that goes. In 1925, Adolf Hitler published his autobiography, Mein Kampf, which is kind of scary, but yeah, it's history. 1938, Douglas Engelbart created the first computer mouse, which of course revolutionized our world. In 1955, Disneyland, July 18th was the day that it opened. So that is wonderful. That was the year that I was born, so always good to remember that. In 1978, Louis Brown was born. That was the first test tube baby, which was the beginning of in vitro fertilization. So that's kind of been a big historical moment. 2001, J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix was the fastest selling book in history. Sold 5 million copies in the first 24 hours. So that's pretty amazing. And I fondly remember Harry Potter because my daughters were so into Harry Potter. That was such a wonderful thing to get teenagers just so into dressing up and reading and going to the movies and reading. That, you know, as a teacher, that was truly incredible. We need another one like that. 2006, Twitter was launched. And I think that's kind of, it's on the next one, which is huge. A couple of National Days today. Today's Hot Dog Day. Yes. It's Caviar Day. So you go from hot dogs to caviar. Even new. It is also National Ice Cream Day. So, you know, for dinner tonight, we'll have caviar and some hot dogs and come up with some ice cream and celebrate life. There we go. Interesting. And then what I think hits all of us here in this room, because we're all public service people. This is Nelson Mandela Day. It's an international day. He was actually born on July 18th. The day was started in 2009 by the United Nations. They, of course, service organization. Many of you may have heard of the 60 minutes of service. That was kind of like something that they wanted everybody to go out on this day, whatever, it takes 67 minutes of service. Later on, they honored that on the 67 years of service. They realized later that was a faux pas, but it's okay. A decade later, a movement has gone to try to revitalize that movement. Sadly enough, in South Africa right now, as many across the world is, things aren't quite like they used to, and they are struggling again. I think I read that 10% of the population has 80% of the land, and so we're still fighting for inequality and poverty. And so I'm kind of leave with something that he has said, and that is make a difference in your community. It is still in your hands to combat poverty and inequality, which I think those of us in the room have a passion of understanding that it is our job as people to make a difference as we can. And one of the things that I liked, well, it's kind of interesting, at the beginning, they really were going for just little things to do. And then they kind of tried to say, no, we need to make bigger impacts. And then they realized that truly the best impacts come when you do the little things and bring people together, because it's much more impactful when you can bring people together in a room of different races and whatever, and get to know them. So I hope that as we keep on going in our service, we will continue to do that. So there we go. With that, I will start happy bucks. I'm going to start off with some happy and sad bucks. Sadly, I'm going to start with the sad ones first, because I didn't realize, and I'm so sorry, Austin, that you have dealing with the tragedy too. Most of you know Kelly, and realized that Kelly lost her grandson in a motorcycle accident last week. He has passed on, and that's just heartbreaking. I mean, so it kind of brings me to the, how do we wrap our arms around somebody who is dealing with that sort of tragedy? And you know that it happens all the time, but when it hits home and it hits close, it makes it even harder. So, you know, somehow find a way to reach out to her, to us, and so sorry. Yeah, so that's very sad, very sad. But on a happy note, I am to go back to last Saturday. And what a joy it was for me, partly because I was so devastated by the tragedy and just some things in my own life that are going on, that I realized how much I needed to laugh. And I sat there and I laughed and I laughed until I cried. And it was such an emotional release that I thank you for that, because it did mean the world to me. So with that, I'll pull out the cards. Oh, happy bucks first. Happy bucks first. So happy, sad bucks, whatever you've got, raise your hand and I'll turn.
I wanted to say comedy night was so good and great emceeing, Jenny. And we were in the front row and Gina Marie got picked on like being young, but being loud. But it was definitely my cheeks hurt. It was fun. Thank you.
I agree. Saturday night brought a lot of laughter to our lives. That was a ton of fun. Jenny, you are such a natural. And the little lady, Sally was her name? Susan Ryder. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
She's an icon.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you, Gina, for taking it for us. All of us open the back. She did pick on Gina. Gina just got smiling.
An awful thing to be picked on.
Yeah, we'll never bribe by bras again. Yeah, anyway, yes. Kudos, that was awesome. Mark, thank you so much. I too met Mark early in my time here in the Rogue Valley 30 years ago, and have appreciated all your generosity through the years. And the real treat was the first time we were shopping when we were down in Mexico at Costco, and went, oh my God, finally we can get some decent wine down there. So thank you for that. And then happy bucks, I guess, or Tuesday floated the Umpqua in Bend with
all of my sons and all of my grandkids. So that was a joy. That doesn't happen very often. So that was a lot. So.
First, it's bad, but because who's gonna replace you, Jamie? You are half the funds. It's very true, it's very true. And thank you for the education, Mark. I mean, it was wonderful. I really am. And I'm going out to Valley View. We're having up some activity.
Yeah.
As a public speaker, I understand. I cannot thank you enough for showing up for me.
Yeah.
It really, really meant a lot. It was a big surprise. And everybody here was so excited. The big surprise with the secret. And my happy bucks are for the end of the night. I went home and one of the things I learned from Bobby Kidder is my favorite line of poetry that she wrote, and I don't remember the whole poem, but the one line that has always struck me is, "And then the moment was gone." And part of the beauty of that statement is being aware when you're in the moments. And that night I came home, I sat in my lawn chair in the front, out in the country, and I just sat there for probably 30 to 45 minutes, just kind of relishing the moment. And I knew it was one of the moments. And I said to Mark, I said, you know, not everybody gets a day like this. And it was a really great day, and a big part of that was all of you showing up, and of course, Susan Rice being as amazing as she is, and just a lot of years of great work here at Wild River. And it was emotional, it was funny, it was beautiful, and I thank you very much.
Mark, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the sample.
I'm happier today than about my business.
These happy bucks are because I'm happy to see Sally Schneider.
Yeah.
That's what that Sally, about 2 weeks after my first wife died, she worked at Evergreen at the time. And as I walked into their New Year's party, I saw her moving to the music, and I had to dance with that girl.
Okay. Are we ready for the cards? Here we go.
Hey, Valerie.
Yes.
I would like to mention, if you guys haven't been to the Heart before, it is so much fun. So just, shout it. Do you need them?
It should be in the box. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, we got it.
I love it. I would do the same.
Here we go, as an honorary.
Sorry, to be heard. Not that one.
2 of spades. Sorry, I was gonna say 2 of spades. All right, very good.
Thank you, Valerie. Congratulations, Beth. Thank you, Mark, for a wonderful talk. Thanks everybody for turning up today. Sally Snyder, as we were thrilled to see you, like to see you again. Where'd you go? There you are. Pat, Jolene. So our thought for today, give every day the chance to be the most beautiful day of your life. That's from Mark Twain. Okay, we'll see you next week, and I'm sure Mark will stick around to answer questions if you want to come up and say hello.
Yeah, and it works for me all the time.